6 of the best guys to cover high school football in the state of Ohio. We will talk to all of these individuals coming up and get their thoughts on their regions. We're going to throw some questions out at these individuals, let them give their thoughts, and I'll tell them why they're wrong, especially Ryan Cavanaugh. We'll do all that coming up for you here on the program tonight, and we're glad to have you with us here this evening for this edition of Ohio Football Weekly. Playoff time. There's not a time like it if you're a high school football fan in Ohio, especially these first round games. Yeah, there are some games that people will look at and go, well, there's no way this 16 should be playing a 1, or there's no way this 13 should be playing a 4. But all that's out the window now. We're playing high school football. We're in the playoffs, and that's what matters right now, and that's all part of the fun. And these smaller communities, these teams in, say, the Midwest Athletic Conference, or some of the smaller communities in Northeast Ohio, you think Kirtland, you think you go back over to the Midwest Athletic Conference, you think Versailles, you think Maria Stein, you think Versailles, how these communities just rally around their teams, and some of the larger districts as well, too. There'll be great crowds on Friday night, and it should be a lot of fun as the playoff coverage gets underway all across Ohio starting on Friday. Now, again, keep in mind this year, with the football playoffs, everything the first 2 rounds on Friday nights, and then after the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, Divisions 4, 6, and 7 move to Saturday. Everything else stays on Friday. So that's the breakdown. But the first 2 rounds, everything's on Friday night. And then after that, it splits off with 4, 6, and 7 going to Saturdays. And the higher seeds, again this year, host in each of the first 2 rounds of the Ohio High School Athletic Association football playoffs. We have a poll question up for you. It's on my Twitter page. Go to @MartyBannister. And we're asking you, again, there's been so much discussion about this topic. Should losing teams be in the playoffs? Well, we're asking you tonight, should the OHSAA football playoff format be altered to keep teams with losing records out of the playoffs? So you can go to my Twitter handle, @MartyBannister, and give us your vote. We're getting a lot of responses to that already, and we certainly encourage you to join us and give your thoughts on that as well, too, tonight here on Ohio Football Weekly. I want to say, first of all, thanks to everybody who's been with us throughout the regular season and all the guests, and we've had coaches, we've had players. It's been so much fun to do this. I think it's a sport that, yes, it gets a lot of coverage on Friday nights, but shows like this are very few and far between, and I know the reaction we've been getting from coaches, from players who've been on, some of the media members we've had on, all enjoy this opportunity to come on and talk high school football, and we're so glad to be able to do that for you. And I think we're going to try and maybe do a couple special things the closer we get to the state championships in Canton, so we're looking forward to all that. But this has been a great deal of fun doing this year, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again next year, maybe even a little further than that, as we talk high school football with you. So as I mentioned, the program tonight is just full of great guests talking high school football. We're going to go with a panel discussion format in the show tonight. Something we've really never tried before, but as I mentioned, showrunner Adam Dell has been working since probably, we went on at 6:30. He's probably been working since about 6:25 to get all this organized. So, no, he does a great job, and we're all ready to roll here with the first half of our panel discussion on the football playoffs and football around the state of Ohio. So, Adam, let's roll in the first group of individuals who are going to join us tonight. 3 guys who do a great job covering high school football all across the great state of Ohio. There they are. Ryan Cavanaugh from the Northeast Ohio area. David Wilson, also from the Northeast Ohio area, does a lot of work in with the Buckeye Sports Network out of the Toledo area, covers Sandusky Bay and that area as well, too. And then Brent Ford. You remember we had Brent on. Brent, were you on the first show way back in August? Yeah, the first show. He had that great touchdown call of Westerville Central. They're one of the teams, by the way, with a losing record is in the playoffs. We won't hold that against Brent. But nonetheless, this is the first group of guys we're going to have on with us tonight and talk a little bit of high school football. First of all, guys, good to see all of you tonight. Let me start, first of all, Mr. Cavanaugh, with you. You're in the area where everybody seems to think that's where the best high school football in Ohio is played, and I don't know that this year's really done anything to make folks feel otherwise. There are some great teams up there. I watched a little bit of the Lakewood St. Ed Akron-Hoban game the other night, and just a great high school football game. Ryan, how good a year was it in Northeast Ohio for high school football?
Well, and to your point, first of all, Marty, thanks for having me back on again. I thought after last time that this was never going to happen, so this is truly an honor for me. But you know, everybody needs a good foil, so I'll play that role. But
that's why you're here. That's why you're here.
Appreciate it. Understood. Actually, I did an informal poll this year at Northeast Ohio, and they all agree with you. The best football is played up in Cleveland. That's just what they're saying, Marty. It's not me, but throughout the stadiums. I will say this. I think there are very legitimate all jokes aside, very legitimate state championship contenders in regions 1 through 7 from Northeast Ohio. And I think they're going to be well represented in down in Canton for the state championships. And you mentioned St. Ed's and Hoban. Now, that's not a big-time game in the state of Ohio. That's a big-time game nationally. And those are two teams that should be ranked top 10, top 15 nationally. And the rest of the state's going to have to deal with those two powerhouses come first weekend of December.
Should have mentioned right when we brought Ryan on, he does work for Spectrum Television, not only high school football, but also covers the Mid-American Conference football. Does a lot of great work covering the Mid-American Conference. That's what happens when you get old, Cavanaugh. You forget little things like that when you have your guests on your program. So I'm sure you'll forgive me for that. David Wilson also with us here, another guy who does a great job of covering high school football and does a lot of work, as mentioned, with the Buckeye Cable Sports Network in the Toledo, Sandusky Bay area. David, we've had you on before in this program talking about that part of the state of Ohio. There are some good teams in that area. I know some of the divisions you cover are some of the smaller divisions in the 4, 5, 6, and 7 range, but there's still been some pretty good football played in that region of the state this year too, hasn't there?
No question about it, Marty. Great to be back with you, and I tell you what, it's an honor to be on with a couple of great people, Ryan Cavanaugh and Brent Ford. We've all worked together for many years on the state championship games. Right, Sandusky Bay Conference is the league that I cover most often, and you're right, some good divisions 4, 5, and 6 teams, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of great players, a lot of great talent, and as I've always said on some of our broadcasts, some of the smaller school divisions provide some of the biggest thrills year in and year out.
Absolutely. David, I'd like to thank you for dressing up for the program tonight as well, too. Brent Ford from Central Ohio is with us here as well, too. He covers games for Westerville Central and has a network, Central Ohio Sports Network, and does a great job covering Westerville Central and the Ohio Capital Conference as well. And Brent, I know you heard Ryan mention a moment ago that everyone in that part of the region thinks that's where the best high school football is played. There are some pretty fair teams in Central Ohio this year. Give me a rundown quickly, your thoughts. What did you see this year that stuck out for you in Central Ohio?
Ryan made that comment, and I had to jot that down and make sure I said maybe Columbus has some of the best football, specifically in the Ohio Capital Conference. The Ohio Capital Conference is probably one of the best conferences within the area. They've got a lot of great big teams in there. I really like Gahanna coming out of the Division I, Region 3 for Central Ohio. They're tough. Westerville Central played them. They do everything very, very well. There's other great teams that come in. Some surprises. Thomas Worthington has a winning season for the first time in I don't know how long. It's been a long time. Grove City got on everyone's radar throughout the year. They're changing things up. They're in a great playoff spot. They're hosting for the first time. A lot of other great schools coming out of the area in all the divisions throughout Central Ohio. So it's really great to see some great football here in Columbus.
I'm going to throw this open to all three of you gentlemen. And when we talk about the strength of football in this state, and you've all had the opportunity to cover games at different levels, collegiately, high school, certainly, it's no great surprise that when people recruit, they usually come to Ohio first, or it's one of the first stops on any coaches if they're worth their salt. It's any of their recruiting stops. But it seems to be a state that, I mean, just year in and year out, guys, the talent is just so remarkable coming out of Ohio. I know people say Texas, Illinois, Florida, certainly California as well, too. But what is it about Ohio that the talent level just seems each and every year to go up and get better and better each year? And anybody can take a stab at this right out of the chute here. Well, don't all jump at once.
Well,
David, go ahead.
I'll jump in. I think you make a great point, Marty, and I have a chance, to talk to players, before and after games, and I think I hear a familiar refrain all the time, especially talking to, seniors playing in their final year of their careers will say, hey, me and my teammates here, we've been playing football together since we were 5 years old or 7 years old. And I think the whole idea of playing football is just kind of embedded into, the way of life here for young kids. And they grow up loving the game, they grow up playing the game, and they become very fundamentally sound football players. And so they're not just blessed with athletic talent that catches the eye of a college recruiter, but they know what they're doing. And most of the time, they're two-way players. or three-way players, and they never leave the field, offense, defense, or special teams. And so, I haven't, this is all anecdotal. I haven't done research in other states, but I just think it's the way football is ingrained. When you talk to most high school football players in the state of Ohio, they'll tell you they've been playing since they could, hold a football.
Ryan, what about you? I mean, you've played, so you know what this is like, the attitude and the way people approach this game in the state of Ohio. There's just a different feel about it, isn't there?
No, he played.
Yeah, there is. And
what was that,
yeah.
Dave? He played, though, so we'll count that. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Marty, I love you guys. I bring a different perspective. I bring a bit of a different perspective because I played college in Ohio. I've covered Ohio for years, but I played high school football in Michigan. And I can tell you it's just different. And how do you between Michigan and that, I have firsthand knowledge that it's different. It is not. Friday nights in Michigan are not what they are in Ohio. And if you go and you look at the Arizona Cardinals compared to the Cleveland Browns fan base, it's different. And the reason is a lot of those people, I don't want to say transient, but they didn't grow up in Arizona. There were no Arizona, Phoenix Cardinals, whatever they were. And the Jags are the same in those states. You have so I bring up the pro example by saying people here are born to be Browns fans. People in Arizona might be born to be Cowboys fans or Browns fans or Lions fans, God forbid. But, wherever their parents came from and ended up in Arizona, that translates to Ohio because people are St. Ignatius fans. They're Stowe Bulldog fans. They're Benedict. It goes on and on. If you go to, we're seeing it now. You go to these different high schools, especially when you talk about the western portion and the MAC high school conference. They don't grow up wanting to be LeBron James, Baker Mayfield, or Nick Chubb, or Darius Garland. They want to be the senior on the high school football team. And Dave used a great word. It was ingrained. And I think football is ingrained in the youth in the Buckeye State. College coaches recognize that. The brand of football is different because the kids care. It's different. It's different the way it's coached. It's different the way it's played. And it's different from the way it's held inside kids' hearts, that the goal is to be on that high school football field Friday night lights in the state of Ohio.
Brent, and I know that's something you can echo as well, too. And I'll agree with Ryan. Dave used a great word. It's ingrained. It's what we do growing up in this state.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the points in that ingrained is locally for Westerville, a lot of the kids that play at Westerville Central has spent their middle school years together at Genoa Middle School. At Westerville South, it's the same. They spend their years in middle school at Blendon Middle School. Westerville North gets a mix of the other middle schools, and you get one or two kids who come from other middle schools to other schools, but it starts at that middle school level. And I'll pose this to you guys as well. I would say that a lot of that comes from the coaching. You got a lot of great coaches who played high school, college, professional football, and then they come back to Ohio where it all started for them to coach the next generation. So it's a continuous cycle, and I see it in the coaching as well locally.
And that's a great point, the coaching. And I see Ryan nodding in agreement, and Dave as well, too. And that's such a big factor. Ryan, you and I, we've called Kirtland before, so we've had firsthand knowledge of Tiger Laverty and what he's done in that part of the state. And, Dave, you've seen great coaches as well, too. And I'll just echo what Brent said, guys. And you can each take a crack at this. Dave, we'll start with you. But that's so big in all this, isn't it?
Yeah, prime example in the SBC is a team or a school that most people probably haven't even heard of, Margaretta School in the small village of Castalia, Ohio. They're Division VI. They've been, experiencing some downturns in their program the last several years. Made a coaching change, and they brought in a guy named Gary Quizno, who's a Ohio high school coaches Hall of Famer, coached for 33 years or so, 29 of those at Oak Harbor High School. Very accomplished guy. He had retired and stepped away from coaching, but he's wanted to do it again. So he takes the Margaretta job. They go from 2-8 to 8-2 and into the playoffs. And so, to Brent's point, obviously a coach, putting his energy, his knowledge, his know-how and experience into that group of kids makes a complete 180. and now they're playing in week 11. So he's right. There's some just real, national treasure type guys who coach here. Chuck Kyle retiring this year after a unbelievable career at St. Ignatius. The list goes on, but he's right. I can't imagine there's a collection of coaching talent at the high school level that would surpass it in any other state.
Ryan, I'll let you follow up on that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, you mentioned Chuck Kyle, Dave. At his last home game, they made a big deal. They had it at St. Ignatius, and he was presented with a letter from Roger Goodell, a framed letter. I mean, who's getting that? At the last game, the home game, I mean, his season's still going on there in the playoffs. But I think that is one anecdotal story that speaks volumes about what we have here in the state of Ohio. And it goes up and down. Steve Speck down in St. X writes a book, and people buy it. I'm gonna go back to your earlier question, Marty, about naming Texas, California, Georgia, these hotbeds of recruiting. Ohio is right there. They're a top 5 state in the country where people go and get recruits. And a big reason for that is the coaching, because these colleges at the D1 Power 5 level, it's not, okay, this guy he's got amazing size, strength, and speed. We can make him into something. They know that this kid's coming in with good habits. He understands technique, and he understands what it means to work hard. So, and that really is a credit to coaching. We in the media, we like to say, oh no, this team's this and this team's that, and why is the MAC so successful? And we can make all kinds of excuses. But if you look at Avon, you mentioned Kirtland, you mentioned these programs, especially in the public school. There's good coaches in private school also, but the public school has the kids they have. And I come from a private school background when I say that. These private schools public schools that don't have a dip year in and year out, that's coaching. And I think Ohio is very fortunate to have the coaches they do.
Let me throw another question out here at you individuals. We'll start with Brent first of all, because this kind of hits home with him. Westerville Central, they're in the playoffs, but they're at 3-7 going into their playoff game Friday night. We have a Twitter poll up right now. We're asking individuals, should teams with a losing record be allowed in the playoffs? Should the format be altered? Brent, I'll start with you, since Westerville Central, you carry their games. They're 3-7. Let me get your thoughts on this right out of the chute here. Should a team with a losing record be in the postseason?
I would say this is going to get mixed reviews, and I would say yes. I think when you look at Westerville Central's strength of schedule and who they have to play throughout the first 10 weeks, it's one of the toughest in the Ohio Capital Conference. I mean, you're playing a Division II team in Westerville South, but that Westerville South team is fast. They're athletic. And a 3-7 mark, Westerville Central, most of the time in those games, didn't play at a 3-7 team. That could easily be flipped on that record. I think the expansion, obviously, for some past players and coaches who think it was more meaningful to have smaller amounts of teams in the playoffs, they're maybe feeling a little hurt about maybe what were my chances if it was expanded. So you have to think about the opportunities for more play, for the athletes to get more exposure. You have to think about what that can do for a program to get another week of practice if you are on that losing side of a record. Just keep putting in the work. You're going to have opportunities to, I believe, grow. And there are some other controversial things about that. People saying that there are financial reasons for this, and that could very well be a possibility. It's hard to say. But I overall like the expansion. It gives more opportunity for the players, and it gives more exposure for a lot of those schools that are trying to build something big, regrouping like a Grove City or a Thomas Worthington here locally, who have come onto the scene this year, and they're making heads turn. It gives them an opportunity to make some noise in week 11. So I'm a proponent of it.
And Brent, I will add to what you said a moment ago about the financial part of it. I did an interview with Doug Hute a week or so ago, and that was one of the first things we talked about, the executive director of the OHSAA, and he made no bones about it. That's why this was one of the big reasons why this was done, because you have to keep in mind, much like how college athletic programs are funded by football, well, the OHSAA that plays an enormous role in their funding and their ability to sustain and be monetarily sustainable. So it's not a secret. Nobody's hiding from that. And I think sometimes that's overlooked a little bit because people right away just assume, well, it is all about money. Yeah, it is about money, but it's not all about money. That's a big part of it, but it's not the only reason. And your points about it helps a program build, I think, is a good one. Ryan, let me throw back at you in this. One of the matchups in your area that's getting a lot of attention is 1-9 Stowe Monroe Falls playing at 9-1 Lakewood St. Edward. And again, when you look at the limited number of schools in that Division I bracket, the majority of teams with losing records are out of Division I. If you go and look at it, that's where the majority of those teams reside with the losing records. But Ryan, let me get your thoughts on this. Do losing teams deserve another shot at this?
12 teams, Marty. 12 teams. Let's go to like the NBA hybrid, and then 5 through 8 play 9 through 12, and then the top 4 teams get a bye. I'm okay with expanding it to 12. I'm hoping I'm not getting in trouble with anybody at the OHSAA here, but I think those other teams, listen, having a 1-9 team in the playoffs, I did Stowe last week. They're 1-9. They're playing St. Ed's. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Martin Potter and the rest of the Stowe coaching staff. In fact, I consider them friends. They're building something. It's his first year there, and he's taken over a program. And Stowe will get back to where it used to be because of those guys, and he'll get his players going in the right direction. Do I think the last game they play should be against St. Ed's when you're trying to build it and morale and get kids to come back out? I don't. And I don't know if it's a good idea for the kids. I know the counter argument is, well, these high school kids get to play one more week. I just think that 12 teams, you set it up, you have that extra week, the 4 teams. Now you're earning something by getting the 4 teams to be a top 4 seed. You get a bye. And if that's not important, go ask the NFL players when they get a bye if they want to rest their bodies. Go ask Coach Hewitt or anybody else who made it to a state championship last year if he would appreciate time for his kids to rest up. And you could earn that in the top 4. Something I think the 16 has taken away is the regular season. I think it's too long. Let's cut it down to 8 teams. I just think it's too much for kids this age. They're putting too much tread on the tire. So, yes, I'm cool with having an extra week. I think always there's some 9-10 teams where you're like, man, I really wish I would see them in the playoffs. Let's do it. Let's do 12 and give the top 4 teams a bye.
And the point about the length of the season, I think, is somewhat valid because now to win a state championship, you've got to play 6 games, which is one more than at the halfway point of the regular season. So it is, yeah, there's no question that it does add some wear and tear. And we're also talking about, let's not forget basketball. Let's not forget wrestling. A lot of these kids are doubling up and playing multiple sports. So that's a big factor in this as well, too. Dave, let me get your thoughts because, as I mentioned, the majority of the teams with losing records come out of Division I. And, again, that's because of the not limited number, I guess, but the lower number is probably a better way to phrase that, of teams in Division I as compared to some of the other divisions. Some of the lower divisions, not as many teams with losing records. Your thoughts on this? Does a sub-500 team belong in the postseason?
I don't disagree with Ryan that you might be able to come up with a better, more equitable format and be creative with it. But we've sort of gone with the computer points model. It has worked for years and years and years. It's somewhat objective in terms of the way the points are calculated, and so it's not that often, but you get some anomalies every once in a while because of the teams on a certain team's schedule, and they might have a losing record. I don't think you should get, worked up and throw the baby out with the bathwater because you get some odd matchups from time to time. As far as I am a proponent of the 16 teams just because I do believe it's great for kids to have a chance to play. We do it in basketball, we do it in baseball and other sports where every team is in the state tournament and you go from there. So I'm not sure why football should be different. I understand there is some more physical toll that takes place, but I think if you ask the kids, they all want to play. I think if you ask the kid after playing a state championship game, as you mentioned, Marty, their 6th playoff game, and after the game you told them, hey, we've added a second ultra championship against the state champ from Michigan. You guys want to do it? They would all say yes. So, I just think it's opportunities to play, and I think overall it's a positive.
And again, as you mentioned, football, the only sport where everyone does not get in. And of course, in 2020, we all know what a mess that was because of the situation outside of football. But everybody had a shot that year, and it was convoluted to say the least. The other thing to keep in mind about all this too is, guys, those lower seeds, they have the option to opt out. If they don't want to play that playoff game, they can say, thanks so much, a copy of the home game and a free T-shirt, and we're going home. So they don't have to show up, but I don't know of anybody that's going to do that unless they're dealing with some serious roster issues heading into this. All right, a couple minutes left with you gentlemen. The first segment of our program here tonight, talking high school football. Teams from your area. Brent mentioned Gahanna a moment ago. We've mentioned Lakewood St. Ed with Ryan as well, too. And we'll start back with you, Ryan, on this from Northeast Ohio. Along with Lakewood St. Ed, who are some other teams to watch as the playoffs open up on Friday night?
Well, I think St. Ed's is the team to beat in Division I. Medina's back again with that high-powered passing offense. They might give them a run for their money. Division II, you got to expect it's Hoban unless something changes, but you got 10-0 Hudson, and you got a really strong Riverside team coached by Dave Boers, who's physical. And there's some talk up here that Riverside might be able to knock off Hoban. And, of course, you have Avon waiting if they're able to get through that. Division III, Chardon, their only loss was to Riverside, so that speaks volumes. I think Division III, Region 9 is one of the most stacked divisions. You got Camfield, they got a quarterback going to Indiana, and some real studs in that division. Division IV, Region 14, the Ville. Glenville might be back, Marty. They've never won a state championship. They've been in the big dance a couple times. They've gone all the way from Division II down to Division IV, and Coach Ted Ginn has a stacked offense. So I'll cut it off at Region 4 because we're running short on time, but those are some names and teams to look out for.
Have they allowed a point since, week 3, I think it was, week 3 or week 4? Because I know they tossed a shutout in their first game, Ryan, and then they played, I think one of them was Olentangy Liberty, they beat by a couple of points, and then they won another game by a couple of points. And I don't think they've given up a point since then, have they?
They shut out St. V 25-0. They beat Liberty by 6. Liberty scored 14. Then they beat Avon by 6. So Avon's only loss has been to Glenville. And you're right. Since then, they got in the second league. They haven't let up a point. It's a really, really strong team that could compete with a lot of higher division teams. And I think, frankly, they're the team to beat in the state of Ohio in Division 4.
Brent Ford, you mentioned Gahanna when we brought you on a short time ago. You like this Gahanna-Lincoln Lions team. And for folks who don't know, they have done what they've done this season without playing a home game. Their stadium's under renovation, so they've been bouncing around and getting some of that good old Whitehall home cooking. We like to see that. They're playing a lot of their games at my alma mater. So we're happy we can help Gahanna every once in a while out when they need it. Brent, take me, though, through Central Ohio. Outside of Gahanna, who are some of the other ones to watch in Central Ohio this year?
Out of Division II, Region 7, I really like Westerville South. I've talked about them multiple times so far tonight. I really like how quick they are. They're a team that gets after the football quick. They move down the field pretty quick. I like the Wildcats coming out of Division II, Region 7. In Division 1, there's a lot of Central Ohio teams, obviously, in Division or in Region 3, but Region 2 has some as well. There's some good matchups. Olentangy at Dublin Jerome, I like that one. The Celtics are going to put up a good run in the postseason. I really like to see what they would do moving forward. It's really a toss-up for me who's going to come out of each region, but out of Region 3, I really do see Gahanna making a run, if not maybe in Upper Arlington. They're still playing at a high level. Those are some of those top teams in Division 1 and Division 2. You could go on through all the other divisions, but how about some of the City League teams? You've got Columbus South, who's probably going to make a nice run in Division 3, Region 11. Overall, I think we can't ever rule out Hartley. They're always going to be a tough team. They're always well coached. I really like to see how they're going to do come out of Region 15 in Division 4, Marty.
And another one to keep in mind, certainly in those lower divisions, Brent and Central Ohio's Harvest Prep. Again, they're your year in and year out a team that's always seemingly either making a run to the state championship game or are playing in the state championship game. They've had a pretty good run. David Wilson, we'll give you the final word in this as we look around the state of Ohio. From the area that you cover, any teams you think have a decent shot at getting to Canton?
Yeah, I'll give you two. Going back to Division 4, Region 14 that Ryan was talking about, I'll go with the Perkins Pirates. They're the number 3 seed in that region, 9-1 on the year. They're coached by Jalen Santoro, who was an area star at Bellevue High School, went on to be a quarterback at now at Perkins, doing a great job. They have a great junior quarterback by the name of Logan Lesh. They will play the 14 seed River Valley on Friday. Should have a fairly easy time, but if they continue to advance, they will have a matchup at some point with Glenville. And then in Division 5, Region 18, the Huron Tigers, coached by Sam Holler. His son, Dylan Holler, is the quarterback and also tremendous safety on the defensive side of the football. They are 8-2. Their 2 combined losses, combined 2 points, both 29-28 setbacks, one of them to Perkins. So they are a wide open spread formation team with a lot of great playmakers, an array of receivers and running backs. And Holler is the real deal, being recruited heavily by Toledo. So Perkins in D4, Huron in D5.
Guys, this has been great. I certainly appreciate all of your time. Ryan Cavanaugh from Spectrum. Always good to see you, my friend Brent Ford. Keep up the good work with the Central Ohio Sports Network and covering Westerville Central and the OCC. And David Wilson, one of the voices of Kent State Athletics. Great to see you as well, too. And keep up the great work with BCSN. Guys, I know we'll see you up in Canton here in a few weeks. It's always a pleasure. Looking forward to it. Thanks very much for your time tonight, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Ryan Cavanaugh, Brent Ford, and David Wilson, our first round of panel guests tonight on our Ohio Football Weekly show as we preview the high school football state playoffs, which open up on Friday. Still to come, Eric Frantz from Max Preps, Michael Hirn from the northwest part of the state, and also Jacob Wise will help us look over the southern part of the state. We'll do all that when we come back as Ohio Football Weekly, our playoff preview special, continues here on Yamo Media.
Hi, I'm Doug Ute, Executive Director of the Ohio High School Athletic Association. For more than 115 years, the OHSAA has promoted school sports as an important part of the student's educational experience. Interscholastic athletics teach participants lifelong lessons of hard work, teamwork, and self-discipline, along with sportsmanship, integrity, getting along with others, and overcoming adversity. One thing the pandemic has taught us is that being on a team with our friends is more important than ever before. So as you continue your journey in athletics, remember the importance of also working hard in the classroom. Always give your best, never give up, and have fun while you're doing it. As an Ohio native and former athlete who learned these same lessons myself, I encourage our young people to focus on your academics so that you can continue the privilege of participating on your team. After all, the lessons that school sports teach us today will prepare you for the wins and losses in life tomorrow. Education is the key to life's successes.
Hey, it's Coach Howard, and I'm excited to tell you the good news about what's coming your way for this high school basketball season. Every Sunday at 6 p.m., you can catch the Coach Howard Basketball Show live on Yamo Media. We will take a close look at all the previous week's high school action, the big upcoming games, and not only that, but we'll be taking a look at the top teams and players throughout Central Ohio. I'll have special guests throughout the season, including high school coaches, players, and college coaches from all over the country. I'll also be giving out rankings of the teams and the players every 2 weeks. It's going to be a very in-depth show, and I can't wait to get started. Once again, you'll be able to watch the show live on the Yamo Media Columbus YouTube channel and Yamo Media's Facebook page. You'll also see clips posted throughout the week on all of the Yamo Media social platforms. You can also catch the audio podcast on Mondays wherever you find your podcasts. Our first episode will air Sunday, November the 20th. I'm looking forward to this upcoming high school basketball season here in Columbus, Ohio.
or university, you must present a negative trait status or hemoglobin status documentation. Your hemoglobin status is taken at birth with the newborn screening. And what they do is they run your blood for any abnormality or any birth defect. There are thousands of newborn screening birth defects in this country. For more information about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait testing, you can call our offices at 614-228-0157. Or you can visit us via web at ohiosicklecell.org.
And welcome back to Ohio Football Weekly as we continue along here on this Wednesday evening as we head into the Ohio High School Football Playoffs, which start on Friday night all across the state of Ohio. 448 teams out of the 711 that put the pads on back in August are going to play into the postseason. We had a great discussion in the opening half hour of the program, and again, our thanks to Ryan Cavanaugh, David Wilson, and Brent Ford for joining us, talking high school football from their regions. So we're going to move into the second half of our panel discussion this evening, and we have three more individuals joining us now who do a great job, and I mean a great job of covering high school football all across the state of Ohio. We have Eric Frantz. I'm sure many of you have gone to Max Preps, maybe a few times, to find stats and schedules and scores and all those things. Eric joins us from over in the Dayton area. Michael Hirn from the northwest part of the state is visiting with us and does a great job covering the Western Buckeye League and teams in that area. And Jacob Wise visits with us from the Southern Ohio Sports Authority. Jacob does a great job as well, too, covering high school football in the southern part of the state, Chillicothe, Washington Courthouse, Jackson, that area, and further south. Guys, great to have you with us tonight. I appreciate you all taking some time out of your Wednesday to join us. I'll start with you, gentlemen, the same question I ended the last round with, the losing record aspect of all this in the playoffs. Much discussion about that. I know we all have our own thoughts on it, but we have the Twitter poll up, and it's still going right now. And I'm a little surprised, quite frankly, guys, by the response to this. I was asking if teams with losing records should be kept out of the playoffs, and right now 75% of those who've responded have said no. I was a little surprised by that. I thought we would get more than that. Eric, let me start with you. You've been covering high school sports for a long, long time, high school football, and again, as I mentioned, do a great job with Max Preps. Your thoughts? Do losing teams deserve another crack at this? Do they deserve a Week 11 game?
Absolutely. And I don't think it's necessarily the losing record aspect. It's just the amount of teams with losing records. Even when there were 8 teams that went to the playoffs, there were still teams that got in with losing records. So I don't think that is as big of an issue. I think it's just the fact that 16 teams per region are getting in. I was listening prior, and I would tend to agree with Ryan. I think 12 is a good number. It rewards those first 4 teams, the 4-seeded teams up front with a bye week. 12 teams is also what the Coaches Association had promoted. So, I think that, even though football right now is the only sport in the state where not everybody gets into the postseason, football in and of itself is a totally unique sport. Just the physicality of it, the wear and tear, and I think that just the sheer number of 16 teams per region getting in is what's a little shocking, because when you have that, you're going to have multiple teams with losing records.
Eric, let me throw this at you, and this is something that I've heard from a couple of coaches. The 12, and again, I'm fine with 16, quite frankly. I don't have that big of an issue with it. I was fine with 12 also. I thought if you're going to expand, that's where I would have gone first, and then maybe in a few years, let's revisit it and then see if maybe we can go to 16. But the one small, argument against 12 was the 4 teams that got a bye. As you guys all know, football coaches and players are such creatures of habit. Play, practice, and then 4 teams stop for a week from playing a game. Is it that big? Is it that big of a deal in football, Eric? Would that have mattered much, you think?
Well, it's kind of funny because I was at Bellbrook Valley View on Friday night, and probably no less than 7 starters from Bellbrook went out of the game, and periodically, over the course of all 4 quarters, and only a couple of them came back. I would tend to think that they would enjoy another week off prior to their first playoff game just to heal. So I would say, as far as just the physicalness of the sport, and you're getting done playing a 10-week regular season, and then you're going to jump into a potentially 6-week postseason, I would see a lot of coaches being on board with getting a bye that first week of the playoffs.
Michael Hirn's with us as well, too, and again, does a great job covering sports in his part of the state for a number of outlets, and it's always good to have Michael visit with us here this evening. Michael, you've heard a lot of this discussion at this point, and Eric brought up a point about the 6-week run. We all have to keep in the back of our minds about all this. There are only 2 teams that are playing those 6 extra games to get to the state championship. So from that standpoint, maybe that lessens some of this right now. What are your thoughts on this? Are teams, sub-500 teams, deserving of another shot?
Well, here's 4 examples. Let me pose these to you. St. Henry, 2-8. Fort Recovery, 3-7. Devil St. John's, 4-6. Anna, 4-6. What do they all have in common? They went through the meat grinder that is the MAC. Do you think any of those teams don't deserve to be in? Now, that's kind of, to me, where the catch-22 happens, because you had 2 teams in Marion Local and Coldwater who were ranked number 1 all year, destroying pretty much everybody, including those teams. You had a 6-4 Minster team in front, a 7-3 Bremen team. 9 out of 10 teams in the MAC make the playoffs. So those teams have already been through it. But as far as the should losing teams be in, I don't know what you do otherwise, because remember, it wasn't that long ago where I believe it was Dublin Kaufman who got in with a losing record and everybody lost their mind because it was one of the first times. I don't know what else you do because of the, what'd you say, 438? How many teams qualify to make your 16 if you don't do it that way?
Yeah, 448. Yeah, and see, the other thing about this too, and I mentioned this a couple of times in our prior segment, but the majority of these teams with these sub-500 records, guys, are in Division I because, again, of the lower amount of teams in Division I. You have 4 regions there, and I think the most of any of the teams that are in one of those regions is 18. I might be wrong. There may be one that has 19, but I think you don't go any deeper than that. So when you expanded to 16, you knew this was coming, that this was going to happen, where you're going to have a number of 2-8s and 3-7s and even some 1-9 slide in. Jacob Wise, Southern Ohio Sports Authority, with us as well too. Always good to see you as well too, Jacob. Your thoughts on this? Are we making too much out of this?
It doesn't surprise me as much, as people have gotten kind of up in arms about it. Generally I'm one of those people that playoffs should be special, but we're talking about amateur teams, amateur athletes, and anytime you're dealing with that, I'm usually for as many players, as many teams getting, extra work, extra recognition, extra reward as possible. The other side of that too is in the old system before, when way less teams made it in, you had teams that won 7-8 games not make the playoffs at times. So I'd rather have some teams with a losing record make the playoffs to allow those other teams to get in as well, versus making sure that, there's a cutoff point in terms of record.
Eric, I mentioned with the discussion we had in the first half hour about how the folks at the OHSAA, they're not hiding this fact that finance is playing an enormous role in this. Nobody's hiding that. Again, because of what happened in 2020 with the basketball tournament scrapped, the wrestling tournament having to be postponed because of what was going on at that time, they took a serious financial hit. They're not hiding that this is a big part of it. So I think sometimes when you look at this expansion, when it went to 16, I don't really know that they had another choice in that regard if they were going to try to be somewhat financially sustainable right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt they took a hit, and a big one, by having to scrap state finals there due to COVID. Every state association across the country was dealing with that as well. And I think it's good that they're not downplaying it, because clearly, I mean, everybody knows. I mean, if you're going to double the amount of playoff teams, it looks like a money grab, which in part it is. But it's also providing opportunities for kids as well. So I mean, there's 2 sides to the story. In regards to the finances, and this doesn't have to do with football, but I mean, one thing I'd like to see the OHSAA do is expand state tournaments in other sports. We've got 7 divisions in football. Why not go to 4 in track, 5 in basketball, 4 in soccer, 4 in baseball, stuff like that. So, I mean, I think if you're going to do it in football, you can do it across the board as well and give more opportunities to kids in other sports too.
Another topic, guys, I want to get your thoughts on, and Jacob, let's start with you on this. Ohio right now plays games 1 on Thursday, 3 on Friday, 3 on Saturday. back during the basketball season, there were games on Sunday. There was a championship game on Sunday night. In fact, there was one weekend where it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the state championships. Should Sunday be left open from high school football, or should we maybe go to play on one on Thursday, two on Friday, two on Saturday, maybe one on Sunday?
It's kind of a gray area. As someone, selfishly who likes to see as many games as I can, I would like to see, some games on the Sunday, but I understand why it's not. You also could run into issues where, if you play on a Sunday and then you have to turn around maybe and play a little bit sooner than, your usual 7 days. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think is probably the thing that makes the most sense.
I would agree there. Jacob, thank you for that. Michael, your thoughts. Should we be playing high school football championship games on Sunday?
I mean, I'm totally with Jacob on that one. As a guy who tries to get to and cover as many games as possible, I personally hate the first 2 weeks of everybody just on Friday night. But, I mean, I don't see a problem with it as long as it's across the board. It's something that's been talked about out here, for instance, with baseball season, where we usually get to the Elida districts that is packed with teams that are going to have a big run at state, Coldwater, Minster, Ottawa-Glandorf, teams like that. And their question is always, why do we have to keep postponing these things? Why can't we play on Sundays? And I know in other sports, coaches are for it. Maybe football wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
That's the one thing about it. When you need those extra dates, especially with those spring sports, it's hard to have that day sitting there with nothing going on. I think that's a very valid point in all this. Guys, let's start getting your thoughts on some of the top teams from your area. And Eric, let's swing back over to you on this. A lot of work in the Dayton area. And much like what we've already discussed tonight, that's a hotbed for high school football in the state. There are some very good teams in that area. We know the success that Trotwood-Madison has had over the years in making runs. There's a pretty good team a little bit east of you in Springfield that's having a really good run right now. Who are some of the top teams to keep an eye on in that area, Eric?
I think if you're looking at Southwest Ohio and you want to include Cincinnati, clearly Moeller and Lakota West and Elder jump off the board in Division I. But Springfield's right there, more than capable of holding its own. I think Centerville's another team that's got a lot of attention this year. The Elks have won a lot of close games that could have gone either way, so it'd be interesting to see how that bodes for them in the postseason. You also have Princeton and Mason, teams from the GMC that are right there as well. Just a really, really strong top-heavy D1 area. Same with D2. I think that there's a few elite teams in the state, but certainly Winton Woods is one of them. We've mentioned Hoban in the prior segment about, being a favorite in Division II. I think, Hoban, along with Massillon, Washington, and then Winton Woods would be there. Xenia is a surprise team from the area. Buccaneers finished, 10-0, I think, for the first time since the early 1900s, 1902 or something like that.
Wow.
Really explosive offense. I got to see them play Piqua in Week 4 and totally dominated that game. The way the bracket shapes up, they've got a real good chance to get to that regional final. Don't have a lot of postseason success, but they've got a strong senior class and several underclassmen that are leading the way. Kings is another team in D2 from around here that I think can make some postseason noise. Baden in Division III, seemingly been number one all year after Canfield stumbled there Chardon stumbled there for a bit. But saw Baden play Alter, took Baden 18 seconds to score in that game, and whoever plays Baden is going to have their hands full. Tip City, another team in that region that I think, they lost 13 all-league players from last year, but I think they've got a senior class of 24, and they've just plugged new guys in, but they've had a successful run this year as well. Won their side of the MVL, only lost to Xenia. Bellbrook's a team that up until last week had been chugging along, had won 8 straight, stubbed their toe at Valley View. If they can get healthy, I think they can make some noise, but that's just Region 12 is really deep down here. Division 4, you're going to go Wyoming is undefeated. It seems like they're undefeated every year, but I think they're our best bet in Division 4 to get out. And then in the smaller divisions, 5 through 6 or 5 through 7, I know the MAC teams are somewhat close to Dayton, so if we include those,
sure.
There's clearly some teams that can make a run. But Fort Laramie would be a team in D7 to keep your eye on, and Sonia, we'll see. I think they've had a 9-1 season, relatively a good run for them. We'll see what they can do in D7. And then D5, I mentioned Valley View prior. Saw them play last week. Really, really strong. They bumped down from D4, so I think that they can make some noise in D5. That I don't think Region 20 is extremely strong, but I think Valley View and then Milton Union, who's undefeated, and beat them. And Springfield Northeastern in Region 20 as well. I think those are your three favorites.
You mentioned Cincinnati Winton Woods, and I want to swing back up to them real fast with you on this. Running the table this year, 10-0. We've had Chad Murphy on this program, and he's done a tremendous job. They won a state championship last year. They beat Hoban up in Canton, and a tremendous run for them. As you see right now, they're number one seed in their region and have 2-8 Cincinnati LaSalle to open up the postseason on Friday night. That's a team that they're loaded with talent, and they seem to be on a bit of a run right now. I think that team's a very dangerous out right now.
Absolutely, and I think they've kind of been under the radar.
Yeah.
As silly as that is to say, 10-0 defending state champ. But, Winton Woods, I know they finished number one in the final state poll after Hoban lost to St. Ed. I think that clearly they're the favorite down there in Region 8. Xenia could give them a ball game come the regional final if they make it that far, if Xenia does. But, Winton Woods, I think you're looking at them, Hoban and Massillon as clearly the three teams in Division II that jump off the board. Toledo Central Catholic as well. I think you could throw in the mix too.
Jacob Wise, Southern Ohio Sports Authority. One matchup really jumped out at me when I was looking at the bracket in Division IV, and that's defending state champion Clinton Massey at 5-5, playing at 9-1 Chillicothe Unioto. And that Clinton Massey team, they've kind of found their stride right now. They lost a truckload of talent off that team that won a remarkable state playoff game last year. They score a touchdown as time expires. They go for two to win the state championship and convert and win the title. They've thrown the ball, I think it's 31 times this year. That, of all the matchups in that part of the area, I think is a very intriguing one at Unioto on Friday night.
Yeah, Unioto, they've had an outstanding season. Their one loss is to Zane Trace, who went 10-0 this year, and that was a right down to the last possession of the game loss, and a game that they felt like they could have won and been 10-0, and then they get a gut punch of this draw where they have to go and at least they get to host Clinton Massey. But the Shermans have gotten it going offensively. Newton Hoops playing really well, throwing the football. I think set a school record for passing touchdowns this year. So they really are hitting their stride here at the end of the season as well. But I think they would have been a little bit happier to have somebody other than Clinton Massey, who, as you mentioned, 5-5. That's one of those records where you look at it, and we were talking earlier. Should teams that are 500 or below, be in the playoffs? But Clinton Massey's, that's not a 5-5 football team. The good thing is for Unioto is they know that. But I think a lot of people over in Chillicothe on the Unioto side of things are a little bit nervous about that one.
Ironton, Wheelersburg, those areas, those teams are outstanding again. And Ironton, we've had you on this program before and talked about Ironton and the strength of that program. And they're a serious threat in Division V, I think. They're one of the, I think, without a doubt, one of the best teams in the state. What else stands out for you in that part of the state, Jacob?
Well, you just look at that region, Region 19 there in Division V, and you've got three teams at the top, all 10-0 in Ironton, Harvest Prep, Barnesville. But Ironton has I haven't seen the others as much, but Ironton looks as unbeatable right now as anybody that I've seen in our area of the state this year. Portsmouth West has had a phenomenal year as well, really kind of jumping up there at 9-1. If you jump back to Division III, Jackson with a really strong season at 8-2. They could get a couple of wins, and who knows? Bloom Carroll jumps up a division this year. They go 9-1. They've had things rolling as well. So even Chillicothe, if they were to take care of the football, that's a team that can move the ball. And Mason Dowdy throws the ball well. He's had some unfortunate issues with some guys dropping balls that are pretty well thrown on him here lately. But they've got a tight end headed to LSU on their team that is 6'5", so that doesn't hurt. And they could be dangerous. The defense has been playing well. They actually played Jackson right down the stretch there last week in Week 10 in a big rivalry game there at Chillicothe. So there's so many teams in the area that have gotten into the playoffs, and I think in that Southeast Ohio area, a lot of those teams in years past, they were in that bottom half. But this year, it seems like there's more teams in every single region that are, in that top 8 this year.
And that Chillicothe-London game, that's a regular season rematch. Chillicothe beat London, I think it was week 2 or week 3 back in August, and they won it by a field goal. So that should be a very entertaining game. Michael Hirn, you're part of the state. As always, there's some great football coming out of that area. What are some of the teams that stand out in Northwest Ohio right now?
Well, and again, what's kind of crazy about it is with the numbers for boys and schools, you kind of split the Western Buckeye League. Everybody was in Division III. Now you've got it between D3 and D4. Wapak is a team that I don't want to say is much improved, but they're much improved in the fact that they're a much different team than they have been the last handful of years. Having the coach's kid as a freshman and a quarterback and a standout has gotten them to a 9-1 record. You kind of look at Salida fans would like the possibility of a rematch of a game they lost 28-22 in Week 9. But Bellbrook, as St. Mary's learned a couple years ago, we had to go down there twice on Friday night. And then it rained. We had to come back on Saturday to play the actual game. It's not an easy place to win. And I know Wapak is maybe looking forward to that second round. Wilmington is a team, though, that has got an offense that can give them problems. So Wapak's had problems at different times with making stops. And then you got a really good Defiance team. I don't know that people are knowing enough about this Defiance team at 6-4. Saw them in week number 2. They've got a coach in Travis Cooper who is really turning the tide there in terms of, everybody's, hey, it's baseball season in Defiance. Well, 6-4, they had to go to Bay Village a couple of years ago. Now they have to go to Lodi. It's not an easy trip, I think 150 miles or so, but I think that's a Defiance team that I'm not saying they're going to win this weekend, but they could maybe potentially put up some noise. D4, St. Mary's, they host Buckeye Valley. The problem with that is we were looking at the brackets the last couple of weeks, and it was either going to be a potential trip to Glenville in week 2 of the playoffs or to Amish country to visit Millersburg West Holmes. Ended up drawing West Holmes. That'll be fascinating. You see Van Wert, too. And, I heard Dave talk about Perkins. If it's Perkins and Van Wert in that second round, you might want to check the scoreboard to see how high it goes. Because Van Wert's got 2 different games this year where they have 70 points or more.
Wow.
But one of those games, they gave up 41 points and 400 yards on the ground. So, can they stop anybody is kind of the question. You know that the WBL folks would love to have St. Mary's and Van Wert in Week 13. A little bit of a letdown last week for Coldwater in Division 5. They were number 1 going in to the 1-versus-1 battle where somebody won $11,500 on the 50-50 with Marion Local.
Wasn't you, was it?
No. And the funny thing
That's why you're here right now. If it were you, we wouldn't see you. Yeah.
I didn't win the money. I didn't have anything else to do. But it's funny because I always ask my friends, hey, will you buy me some tickets? And I never hear back from them. Karma, though, they never win either. So I guess that's okay.
Yeah. $11,500 at a 50-50 draw at a high school football game. That's remarkable.
And that's the lowest that it's been for a while. A couple years ago, there was a lady that won almost $15,000, and she wasn't ready to go. It was one of those back-to-back games that ended with a field goal that decided it.
Wow.
And there was a cop that had a bag full of money, and he had to sit in the concession stand from, I think, midway through the third quarter when they drew till the end of the game, and he had to just sit there with the money.
Wow. What a great story.
He just walks in the next morning with a bag full of money and just says, all right, just put this in Susie's account.
Amazing. Again, kind of underlines what we were talking about earlier about how important high school football is to a lot of these smaller communities, certainly financially. Eric Frantz, Max Preps, Jacob Wise, Southern Ohio Sports Authority, and Michael Hirn from the northwest part of the state. All of you gentlemen do great work covering high school sports, and I know I speak for folks at the OHSAA. They appreciate all of your efforts, and I thank all of you for joining us tonight to help us preview the state football playoffs. Appreciate your time, gentlemen. I'm sure we'll see you either in Canton or on the way to Canton. Thanks, guys.
Bill's in the mail.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks very much. Before we wrap things up tonight, we want to give you a look at last year's state champions and how they fared going into this year's playoffs. And again, 7 divisions in the state of Ohio, and the 7 state champions from last year as far as how they are ready to go heading into the playoffs this year. Let's start right at the top with Division 1. We talked about Lakewood St. Ed a bit earlier, 9-1 on the season. They defeated Springfield in last year's state championship game. They open up with one of those sub-500 teams, 1-9 Stowe Monroe Falls On Friday night, they play host to Monroe Falls in that playoff opener. Lakewood St. Ed, the defending Division I champion. In Division II, Cincinnati Winton Woods, undefeated at 10-0. Last year beat Hoban in the state title game. They host a 16 seed, Cincinnati LaSalle. Not often you say Cincinnati LaSalle and 2-8. It was one of those years for that team, but they have a great tradition at LaSalle, but they got their hands full on Friday night, no doubt, with the Warriors of Winton Woods. In Division III, the reigning champion, the Hilltoppers of Chardon. Last year they beat number 2 Hamilton Baden 21-14. This year, again, as the top seed in their region, they get 6-4 Akron East to open up the playoffs on Friday night. In Division IV, it's Clinton Massey. We talked about them a short time ago with Jacob Wise. Again, I think this is the game. If you're following games on Friday night, keep an eye on this one. This could be a very interesting football game. That Unioto team loves to spread the ball around and put points on the board in a hurry against the team that's thrown 31 passes this season in Clinton Massey. And that game will be on the north side of Chillicothe on Friday night. Should be a very good one. The 4-seed Unioto and the 13-seed defending state champion in Division IV, Clinton Massey. In Division V, the defending state champion is Versailles. This year they open up the playoffs by hosting the 13-seed National Trail. They own a 6-4 mark. Versailles went 7-3 this season. Moving down to Division VI, Cary is the defending state champion. They beat Coldwater in last year's title game. They'll open up the postseason 10-0 on the regular season. They host the 16-seed Riverdale. And the defending Division VII state champions have moved up to Division VI this year. That's the Marion Local Flyers. They are 10-0 on the season. They last year beat the number 3 ranked team Newark Catholic in the state championship game. They'll open up the playoffs with a regular season rematch against 16-seed Anna. They blanked the Rockets 48-0 in week number 8. So that will do it for tonight's edition of Ohio Football Weekly. We are so very glad you spent the last hour with us talking high school football. Thanks to all of the guests on the program tonight. Great insight from all the gentlemen who joined us tonight to help preview the first week of the high school football playoffs. And again, we thank you for being with us as well too. Hit up our website. You can find all of our social media links where you can see clips of this program. There they are right there. Yamo On Air, Yamo Media Columbus, Yamo Media at Yamo Media 614. So very easy to find the highlights and clips from this program tonight. And again, sample Yamo Media. So much great content here that if you're a sports fan, this is the place to be online. All you got to do is find the Coach Howard Show on Sunday nights. If you missed it Sunday, you missed Chris Holtman, Shaka Smart, Sean Miller. Pretty big miss on your part if you're a college basketball fan. So that was Sunday, and Coach Howard will have his show on Sunday evening. So thanks to Adam Dell, our showrunner, did a fantastic job all season long. And keep checking Yamo Media for more updates. We hope to be with you when we get to the state championship round in Canton. We have some special program coming up for you as we get closer to that. Thank you so much for joining us for all 10 weeks of Ohio Football Weekly here on Yamo Media.